our segment, which is regarding the situation in Kazakhstan. We have a short report prepared on it. Let's take a look at that before we introduce our guests.
Protests started in Almaty, the largest city in Kazakhstan, due to a sharp rise in oil prices. These protests escalated quickly as President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev sacked the government and declared a two-day nationwide state of emergency. Troops from a Russian-headed military alliance of former Soviet states have also been invited into Kazakhstan by President Tokayev to help restore order. Although the protests were triggered due to rising fuel prices, they have now morphed into anti-government riots due to resentment of more than 3 decades of rule by ex-President Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev is his hand-picked successor. There have been scattered reports of violence, including civilians and police officials' deaths. Reports have also indicated that the presidential palace had been set on fire. This is the worst series of protests in Kazakhstan's 30-year-long history.
Well, you heard what's going on in Kazakhstan. To discuss this further, we have been joined online by Mr. Andrei Kurtanov, who is the Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council. Thank you very much for being a part of the debate. We've also been joined by Mr. Khalid Taimur Akram, who is the Executive Director, Center for Global and Strategic Studies. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the show and taking out the time. We, of course, are discussing the developing situation in Kazakhstan and trying to understand why the country is where it is today. And the kind of expectations that the people may have from the government. But of course, in the aftermath of the kind of uncertainty that we're experiencing right now, there is, of course, the issue of the involvement of other powers and how they're going to react to the situation in Kazakhstan as well. Mr. Kurtanov, when we see that perhaps peacekeeping forces led by a Russian military alliance may be sent to help the situation in Kazakhstan and the kind of influence that is possible for other powers to be involved in such a situation is always a possibility. Do we see that maybe there is a possibility of hijacking the sovereignty of Kazakhstan by the Russian forces?
Well, first of all, these are not Russian forces. These are multilateral forces by a group of countries, including Russia, but also some countries from Central Asia, Belarus, and even South Caucasus. Second, I think that as far as Mr. Putin is concerned, political stability in Kazakhstan is one of his prime objectives. I don't think that he has many issues to be resolved from Mr. Tokayev. I think these two guys understand each other pretty well. And Kazakhstan has never challenged the Russian strategic hegemony in Central Asia. That's why it has always been a very comfortable partner for the Russian Federation and for Mr. Putin personally. So I don't think that there is any intention to change the status quo. There is rather an intention to maintain status quo for as long as possible, because this is something that suits Putin's interests quite well.
Right, Mr. Khalid, when we say that the status quo is what is being looked at in terms of that actually moving on in the future as well, then this is of course something that perhaps the people, the protesters out on the streets right now don't really want to see. They of course are there out on the streets for a particular change, a change in the way that they live in the country and a change in the way that they're governed. Can we see that in the coming days, in the aftermath of such protests, it can be scaled up to a level where they want to see a change in the government, a change in the way that the political scenario in Kazakhstan exists as of today?
Yes, you're right over here. First of all, we have to see that why these protests have gone out of hand and why these protests are shifting to the other cities. I must make it clear over here that these protests are headless protests because there is no leader of these protests, and they started from a very small city and in one region where the prices of the liquid petroleum gas LPG were raised from the current price to plus of 0.12 US dollars. And then these protests, they started from one area and then quickly they spread over to Almaty and to the other cities, and people came out on the streets, and all of a sudden people with weapons, they came out on the streets, started putting buildings on fire. And the astonishing thing is that these are the leaderless and headless protests, which shows that it is a classic example of using fifth generation warfare against this country. And I totally agree with my colleague from Russia that the forces which are deployed over there are not some extraordinary forces. They are part of a comprehensive treaty organization, SESTO, which is already signed not only by Kazakhstan but by all the countries. I feel that all the countries, the Central Asian countries, I feel that it is connected to the situation in Ukraine because US is putting a lot of pressures on Russia on the Ukraine issue. And as we know that Kazakhstan is one of the closest allies in Russia in that region. And now this fifth generation warfare is been placed over there in Kazakhstan, and now people are out on the streets. It's a way that by putting they are putting pressure on Kazakhstan, and it is an indirect pressure on Russia.
Right. Dr. Kortunov, while you were talking about status quo and how it can change, or perhaps it is not going to change, we are talking about three, situations. One is, of course, the regional balance. The other one is who is actually ruling the country. And the third one is the economic order, where the rich might be getting richer, the poor might be getting poorer. Let us talk about the third one. Is there a possibility that all this kind of disruptions can eventually evolve into a situation where you have more just economic order in the country?
Well, we can only hope that the current leadership of Kazakhstan will somehow accelerate pending economic reforms, because indeed there are major discrepancies in the real incomes between the regions of Kazakhstan and also between various social groups. Many people believe that the system is not completely fair, that they do not get what they are entitled to get, and that creates a lot of tension in the society. On top of that, of course, we should not forget about the coronavirus pandemic, which closed some economic and social opportunities for many people, especially many people living outside of large metropolitan areas. So that added to the tensions in the society, and partially that is the reason why people went into the streets. So a lot now depends on the position taken by the leadership of the country. People want change. I think that it is natural that after 30 years of basically a single leader rule, they want to have something different. They want to have more presence in the government. They want to have more social mobility. And it is difficult right now for Kazakhstan because I think that if you take macroeconomic situation there, things are likely to get worse before they get better. Since if they move along the market reforms, then prices on some basic commodities for the population and prices on the food stock, on energy, on basic medicines might go up. Also, there is a major concern about potential unemployment. If you start structural changes in the economy of the country, unemployment is doomed to get higher. So there are no easy solutions for Kazakhstan, and we can only hope that the leadership will be wise enough to somehow smoothen these social problems which are likely to emerge in any case.
Mr. Kotanov, but you've earlier mentioned and rightly mentioned that, of course, President Tokayev, he's the one who actually asked for the help from a collective security treaty organization, which, of course, Kazakhstan is a member of. And the forces which has actually entered in Kazakhstan, they are from different other countries, and they are there to maintain the peace. But we understand that around 20% of the population of Kazakhstan is ethnically Russian, and in coming days, if something goes wrong related to that particular ethnicity of Kazakhstan. Do you think that Russia would be, further enhancing its role in Kazakhstan? Number one, and number two, I just wanted to ask, could this treaty organization come up with some kind of the political solution to it? Why? Because of course they can, if they can send the troops in, and looking at the facts that even the opposition don't have any leaders, and there's only one leader who is the president of Kazakhstan right now, and even of course he has question marks in front of the protesters. Do you think that this treaty organization can come up with a political solution to it?
Well, let me try to respond to the two questions. First of all, in terms of the Russian community in Kazakhstan, indeed, it is a significant part of the overall population of the country. And from time to time, there are some conflicts, not major conflicts, but still some. But in this particular case, if you look at the protests in Kazakhstan these days, I don't think that there is a major ethnic component to the unrest in Kazakhstan. I don't think it's about ethnicity. It's rather about social problems. And we can hope that the ethnic situation in Kazakhstan will not deteriorate, and that the power in Kazakhstan will not be seized by radical nationalists like it happened in Ukraine, for example, when they decided to marginalize or even to ban the Russian language. I don't think that we will see anything like that in Kazakhstan anytime soon. In terms of the political solution, I wouldn't really overestimate the role of this military assistance to Kazakhstan. They can probably protect some governmental buildings. They can probably go after international terrorists if such terrorists are identified in Kazakhstan. But in the end of the day, any political solution should be homemade. It should be generated in a dialogue between state and society in Kazakhstan. And I think what the country really needs is a new social contract. And I don't think that any external power, be it Russia or Central Asian countries or China or the West, can come up with a ready solution. The solution has to be found in Kazakhstan itself.
Right. Mr. Khalid, back in 2011, in an oil workers' strike, a police fatally shot about 15 protesters. And this was a big development in Kazakhstan and the way that protests were dealt with. Of course, at the moment, this protest, of course, with reference to the presidential palace and other important buildings being set on fire, needs to be curtailed. But do you think that the possibility of a massive operation being launched in terms of curtailing the protesters, we know thousands have been arrested and been taken into custody already, can be done, and perhaps the important issues that the people actually face in Kazakhstan will be put on the back burner?
And can you also dilate upon what you were saying earlier regarding fifth generation warfare?
Yes, first of all, I would just say that the situation in Kazakhstan, yes, it is right now out of the control of the security forces over there, and that is why the CSTO force is deployed over there, and hopefully the situation will come under control because of two reasons. Number one, as I've said before, that this complete movement is not controlled by any single person. There is no leader of the movement. The people have come out on the street basing on the material which they have been seeing on the social media. As in Pakistan, we have also been facing the fifth generation warfare. So it is a classic example of fifth generation warfare. Yes, Kazakhstan, since last 30 years, this is the third time Kazakhstan is facing these kinds of riots. They saw the riots in 2000 era, and then in 2019 there were another kind of riots, and this is the third time that these riots are there. But these are quite intense, and especially during the holiday seasons, because normally I have been to Kazakhstan and I have seen that in the holiday season, most of the Kazakh people, they go to their villages and they go to their places, and the weather is very much extreme. So people coming out in this extreme weather is quite an unusual thing. Yes, economic situation is quite deteriorating over there, and due to the pandemic, the situation got more worse. The president has
Khalid sir,
dismissed the government, but
Khalid
we
sir, sorry
must.
to cut you. You were talking about social media. Can you identify the companies that might be actually being used there? Is it Facebook or something else?
It is not one company. If you just go and see the Twitter trend yesterday night, the Kazakhstan was on the highest of the Twitter trends. There were many Western media sites. There are few media sites which are being run from Prague, from Czech Republic, some Eurasian radios, some other sites which have been instigating people to come out. And I would still say that it is basically happening to put pressure on Russia because of the Russian involvement in Ukraine. So now pressure has come on Russia because Kazakhstan holds majority of Russian bases, and Kazakhstan also is a key point where the Russian all satellite and missile bases are located in Kazakhstan. So for Russia, Kazakhstan holds a very important position, and Russia cannot afford a destabilized Kazakhstan. So, in my opinion, the situation in Kazakhstan will get under control in next 2 to 3 days, as the president has already dismissed the government, and he has announced a lot of reforms, and they are increasing the pays of the people, of the government servants, and the food prices have come down in last 2 days. So the Kazakh government is quite hopeful that situation will get under control in next 2 to 3 days.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Andrei Kurtanov, and of course, Mr. Khalid Taimur Akram, for being with us on the show and taking the time out for this very important discussion. Yes, Farooq.
Three very quick interventions. Regarding Facebook, there's a reason I asked this, because it seems that every country in the world now should be worried about what Facebook keeps on doing and how it actually is always at the center of all these instigations, right? Regarding, this country called Kazakhstan, its capital, Nur Sultan, that used to be Astana, and Almaty. It's a beautiful country. The people are beautiful, and really, really heartwarming kind of culture there is. They deserve better. Let us hope in coming days we see progress and betterment without much violence.
Absolutely.
And Russia can also help.
Absolutely. And as Mr. Kurtanov was saying, a large portion of the protesters are not evil, and we really hope that their voices are heard above all the noise that is currently existing in Kazakhstan today. Thank you very much for being a part of the debate.